Rise of the SHEconomy. You've probably heard me quote this study if you've been watching me for any meaningful period of time, over and over, and I must have quoted about 6 or 7 different banks by now. So I thought I'd actually run through the article, whereby I quote that statistic of by 2030, 44% of all prime-aged working women, that is between the ages of 25 to 44, will be single and childless. And I mentioned in the past that banks have done projections on this so that they know where to put their investments in the future and profit off of the back of mass spinsterhood. So I've pulled up the article here. It's actually Morgan Stanley. I've copied and pasted the article on Word because otherwise you're not going to be able to see it. So we're going to head over to Word and run through the article. Media and social focus on gender diversity, the male-female wage gap, and women's role in the workplace has rightly been a key topic in 2019. This was 2 years ago, by the way. Corporates and investors are paying attention. How are we gonna milk these single ladies? All the single ladies, you're gonna be creamed. You're a cash cow waiting to be milked. Progress on gender equality, the male-female wage gap, and women's role in the workplace has rightly been a key focus in culture and media throughout 2019, particularly the positive linkage between gender diversity and economics. Since 2010, the percentage of women executives increased to all developed regions, with the largest gains in Asia, with a doubling of participation since 2010. Oh, bravo. Very good. Wonderful. But what are the ramifications of that, my dear Watson? We are about to find out. For women, these public discussions have set the stage for greater equality in areas like education, professional advancement, income growth, and consumer power. For corporates and investors that embrace these trends, there are numerous benefits. Of course there are. From more nuanced corporate governance and performance to bottom line growth. A recent duo of reports from Morgan Stanley Research approaches this theme from 2 angles. First, how a growing population of prime working age women in the US, many single and focused on career, will have greater representation in the labor force, help boost wages, and create potentially large tailwinds in a number of consumer product categories. Well, of course they will. And naturally, there will be other consumer product categories which will hurt. Those consumer product categories which profit off of families, right? If one wins, the other has to lose, within reason. That's just the way it goes. Where are we? In a second report, the quantitative equity research team shares a proprietary framework to help investors identify the most gender diverse companies, which tend to be larger, have better stock returns, and skew toward lower volatility. All right, let's move on from that. Sizing the US gender wage gap. Whilst more women have risen to increased levels of power in recent years, the needle has further to move on compensation equality with their male peers. It's going to talk about the gender pay gap. Does it exist? We're about to find out. In 1980, women earned 64 cents for every dollar that men made, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Today, the gap has shrunk to between 77 and 85 cents of every dollar. How dare they? How dare they make less than men? This is inequality. I don't accept. But let's carry on. While difference of 23 cents on the dollar is still considerable, the underlying issues have shifted somewhat. Oh, really? With some factors like educational inequality improving, and others like family caregiving responsibilities beginning to move in the right direction. In the past, education or lower paying occupational choices largely drove the pay gap, says Ellen Zentner, chief US economist. Let me repeat that again for those who missed it at the back. In the past, education or lower paying occupational choices largely drove the pay gap. What does that mean? Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about this all the time. Women have a proclivity to choose professions that pay less. Period. That's the short. The long is women are more inclined to professions that involve people, and men are more inclined to professions that involve things. Things are in the STEM world: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. People is in the caregiving world, the nursing world, the teaching world. Those are all professions that deal with people, and you'll find most caregivers, most nurses, most teachers are female. That's from a woman's nature. She is naturally inclined towards those professions, which is absolutely fine. But it just so happens that the demand for those professions are low. It's a simple case of supply and demand. The demand for those professions are low because there's so many people doing those professions, mainly women, and therefore the pay is low. That's the way it goes. So yes, on paper there may have been a gender pay gap, but that's primarily because women choose professions that pay less, and that's okay. That's fine. And what they have found in the most egalitarian of countries, Sweden, is that over a course, I think it was a 30 or 40-year period, Dr. Jordan Peterson was citing this study in one of his debates, that Sweden is one of the most egalitarian countries in the world. Egalitarian meaning they actively push and encourage the sexes to engage in opposite sex stuff. So they try and push the women to do man stuff, and they try and push the men to do women stuff. And what they have found is the more they push for equality, the more polarizing the sexes become. I'll say that again. The more they push for the genders to participate in what is typically considered as the opposite, as professions that the opposite gender take on, the more they push those two respective genders to the extremes. And they make an even more polarizing gap, an even greater polarizing gap in terms of the professions that women choose. They choose even more so to do with female-centered professions, and the professions that men typically choose, even more men chose them. So it's almost like you've got some type of paradox going on. The more you push the genders to go against their natural nature, their fitra, the more they will fight to hang on to it. And this evidence is clear as day. And again, the primary reason for that gender wage gap, am I saying that inequality in the workplace or discrimination against women doesn't exist? I'm not saying that, but there are many factors to consider. One of those is their active choosing of lower paid professions. The second one is that women tend to be more agreeable. And in order to become successful in the workplace, you need to be disagreeable. The most successful individuals, think of your Steve Jobs, think of your Gordon Ramsays. They are extremely disagreeable to the point of oppressively disagreeable, but it brought them an oppressive level of success. That's the way it goes. And women, that's not their natural nature. It's counter to their nature to be that way. And that's okay. That's the way it's meant to be. Because if she's not like that, then she's a man. And that makes her innately repulsive to men. You see, women are stuck in a quandary. On the one hand, if she behaves like a woman and feminine, then she's probably going to make less. But she'll have a happy marriage because she makes good wife material. On the other hand, if she adopts disagreeable personality traits, she'll almost definitely make more, but she probably won't be able to find a spouse because she's a bleeding nightmare to live with. Choices and trade-offs, ladies. Choices and trade-offs. Today, motherhood is by far the largest contributor to the wage gap. Okay, makes sense. Since women who become mothers often choose to stop working or work fewer hours. And this is interesting as well because Jordan Peterson was talking about, in his practice, he sees a number of high-powered female career-oriented women. And he said, I've noticed a trend with my female high-powered executives, lawyers, and so on, is that they get to 30, he said, and they tap out the game. They're like, I'm not interested in this anymore. I don't want this career life. I want a family and kids. That's most women. And he goes further. He says, women who don't want children, who actively choose not to have children, even though they're able to, there's something wrong with them. Those are his words, and I'm paraphrasing. He said there's something fundamentally wrong with them. It's not normal for a woman to not want to have children. It's counter to her nature. Let's put this in focus real quick. A woman is in her most comfortable state, is in her most natural state, is in her happiest state when she's in the home raising her kids. Careers don't make women happy. I'll say that again. Careers don't make women happy. It's an innately masculine thing to want to build and, build your empire and become successful and, all of that type of stuff. That's man stuff. That's what men like to do. But you see, here's the funny thing, is that men build so that we can put women inside what we've built. Again, men build so that we can put women inside what we've built and provide for them and take care of them. Women, on the other hand, are not built that way. Women typically don't share their resources. It's counter to their fitrah. They are resource collectors, not resource givers. It's not natural for them to want to share their resources. So then they collect all this money and then they shoot themselves in the foot because now they've literally priced themselves out the marketplace. Why? Because she earns so much that there's so few men for her to choose from. Again, what do I mean by that? Women date across and up dominance hierarchies. It's very difficult for a woman who's earning 100,000 a year to be able to seriously consider a man for dating or marriage purposes who's earning £50,000 a year. It's very hard for her. So she shoots herself in the foot by earning tons of money because now she has a smaller pool of men to choose from. And then on top of that, it doesn't even bring her the most happiness. What makes a woman happiest is raising children. Being in the home and raising children is what a woman gains most. Again, a normal functional woman, a normal woman, she gains most of her happiness from raising her children, not from pursuing a career. Those are masculine goals. That is like a man saying, I aspire to be a homemaker. That's the same thing. Can you imagine? I want you to imagine a man coming to you and saying to you, ladies, I aspire to be a homemaker. To cook and clean and fold the clothes away and do all that good stuff in the home. That's my ambition. You'd be repulsed by him. If he said to you that that's what he wants to do and you go out and do the career, you'd be repulsed by him. Of course, I can hear you already. No, but I want him to help out in the house. That's different. I am asking you, if he came to you and said, this is all I want to do, you'd be repulsed by him. Well, guess what? That's how a man feels when women say, I want to get my career. The exact same feeling. Okay. In the coming years, another demographic trend could help further close the pay gap in the US, the rising ranks of single working women. Based on Census Bureau historical data and Morgan Stanley forecasts, now here's the crunch point, 45% of prime working age women, ages 25 to 44, will be single and childless by 2030. The largest share in history, up from 41% in 2018. And I've got a question for you. What do you think is going to happen to the Western population if women are single and not having kids? What do you think is going to happen? It's going to shrink. The empire will fall. If the empire doesn't perpetuate itself through offspring, through childbearing, which is the most basic human need for the perpetuation of the species, then the empire must fall. It must. So this is all well and good when we're making money in the market, in the workplace, and so on and so forth. Yeah, great. What does that spell for the empire? Single women are expected to grow plus 1.2% annually from 2018 to 2030. I wonder why that is. Thank you, feminism. Compared with plus 0.8% for the overall US population. What's driving this trend? For starters, more women are delaying marriage. Now, let's just hang on that for a moment. You see, You see these girls on the Kevin Samuels show all the time. If you haven't watched Kevin Samuels, I recommend you watch it. Kevin Samuels, he deals with the 30 plus women. 30 plus who are aging out the game, who have high-powered careers, oftentimes very successful, but they have little to nothing to offer a man in the way of what a man values. Again, they have little to nothing to offer a man in the way of what he values. Okay, you have your career, great. So what? We don't give a SHIT. We don't give a damn. We don't care. You telling us you have a high-powered career is like us telling you I want to be a homemaker. It's the exact same thing. Actually, your career is a hindrance to us. Your career is a problem for us. It's a problem because it gets in the way of you being able to take care of me and take care of the house and take care of our children. So what are you going to do? I'm going to have my career. You're going to have your career. Who's going to raise the kids? So we're going to go and work our separate careers so that we can have children for a nanny to raise. Does that make any sense to you? That's completely nonsensical. Don't have the kids. If you're going to have a stranger raise your children, don't bother having them. Your career is a hindrance to us. Not to mention, the more successful you become, undoubtedly, the more disagreeable you become, because that's just the way it goes. That's just the way it goes. So now you've got this high-powered career that we don't care about, and you're disagreeable, and you're probably 30 plus because it takes time to establish yourself in the career, which means you are only 2, 3, 4, 5 years away from geriatric pregnancies, high-risk pregnancies, the age of 35. So you might not be old, relatively speaking, but your eggs are elderly. Your eggs are on walking sticks, crutches. They're in a wheelchair by that point. By the time you hit 35 plus, your eggs are in a wheelchair. They're on their last legs. They're on their last eggs. And I say that with satire, but I mean it. This is serious. You have a short window of time, ladies, to maximize on your God-given gifts of youth, beauty, and fertility. And if you pay that away, it does not come back around. That ship comes to port once. Once it's sailed forever. So what's driving this trend? For starters, more women are delaying marriage, choosing to stay single or divorcing in their 50s and 60s. Women are also delaying childbirth or having fewer children than in the past. These shifting lifestyle norms are enabling more women with or without children to work full-time, which should continue to raise the labor force participation rate amongst single females. Rising labor force participation rates should put upward pressure on women's wages and help increase overall consumer spending. This is great in the short term for the economy, not in the long term. Economies are not built to last with everyone being single. The economy will fall if people are not getting married and having children and perpetuating the damn species. The economy will fall. Make no mistake about it. Economies are not built for spinsterhood and for single bachelors. That's not the way it works. But in the short term, there will be a period of time where businesses will profit. And this is what Morgan & Stanley are preparing for. Women control more purse strings. Okay. As it stands, women already control a large share of the US consumer wallet. They contribute an estimated $7 trillion to the US gross domestic product per year, according to the Center for American Progress, and are the principal shoppers in 72% of households, according to consumer surveys conducted by MRI Simmons. Now, I went to the liberty of taking a snapshot of a Uberfax, something I read a while back, and I've just added it to this article, so it's not in the original article, but I've added it. You can find it here. Worldwide, females earn $18 trillion, but spend $28 trillion. What does that tell you? Women spend more than they earn. How? Obviously, they're spending from their partners or their husbands if they have, or their boyfriends, or whatever the case may be. but they spend more than men. They are responsible. I don't want to use the word responsible because oftentimes it's irresponsible, but they have authority over the purse strings. Listen, if you've ever been a salesman, I used to do door knocking, right, for Anglian home improvements. I would always know that the husband is my biggest obstacle in the way of closing this appointment. I wouldn't close the sale, that's for the sales guy to do, but I would have to close the appointment. And the husband was always the biggest obstacle. I am the biggest obstacle even in my own household with my wife. Always. Women are more inclined towards spending. It's just the way it goes. Meanwhile, women are earning bachelor's degrees at a higher rate than men, and they are the primary breadwinner for nearly 30% of married households and nearly 40% of total US households. Now we're going to take a brief segue for a second because there is another consequence, an unintended consequence of women starting to earn more or even out-earning men. And that is because women are hypergamous from their nature. They don't want to go backwards. They don't want to have to support a man, certainly not. But they would prefer to marry someone who earns at least as much as them, preferably more. Preferably more. And the problem with women now pursuing careers as a priority is that there is a lack, and you can find this article on The Independent, and I'll put both of these articles in the description, a lack of economically attractive men to blame for decline in marriage rates, studies suggest. Lo and behold, what would you believe it? Women earning more spells disaster for them from a perspective of them being able to find suitable partners. Now I can hear the women already, oh, men should just level up. Men should just level up. There's only so much leveling up you can do in the world, ladies, for the average Joe. We're dealing with the average. The average Joe. Women are literally pricing themselves out of the market. Now I'm not going to read through this whole thing, and I'll add it in the description, but I'll read it briefly. A shortage of economically attractive men could be to blame for the decline in marriage rates. The study, published in the Journal of Marriage and Family, analyzed data collected on recent marriages between 2007 to 2012 and 2013 to 2017. Unlike previous studies which looked into gender ratio discrepancies, researchers from Cornell University examined the specific socio-economic characteristics that make a particular man and woman a good match. To investigate the decline, research used the data from the American Community Survey, blah, 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 blah. The socio-economic characteristics of these hypothetical husbands were then compared with actual unmarried men to track the differences. And researchers found that the estimated potential husbands had an average income that was 58% higher than the actual amount unmarried men earn. The fabricated husbands were also 30% more likely to be employed than real single men and 19% more likely to have a university degree. The researchers stated that many racial and ethnic minorities, specifically African American women, were experiencing especially low numbers of economically attractive potential mates. And there's probably a number of reasons for that. But let's carry on. Most women hope to marry, but current shortages of marriageable men with a stable job and a good income, make this increasingly difficult. So we went from having a gender pay gap to now women are finding men economically unattractive. Well, they would only find them economically unattractive if they were starting to out-earn them. Do you understand? You don't find someone economically unattractive who's earning more than you. He might not be a millionaire, but if he's earning more than you, it means he's going to improve your lifestyle. The only reason a woman would find it economically unattractive is because she is going to have to take a step backwards. That's how she feels. He is not meeting me at my level. I will have to go backwards, and women don't like doing that. We'll leave that study there for now. Because women now contribute significantly more to household income than previous generations and remain the primary shopper for most households, their influence has grown in nature and degree, says US retail equity analyst Lauren Castle. This is true whether women are single or married, she adds, though spending decisions do vary by relationship status. We find that single women outspend the average household, shifting spending profiles towards categories most poised to benefit from the demographic growth in single women with rising incomes. Boxed wine, cat food. boxed wine, cat food, apparel, clothing apparel, the likes of Nike and Lululemon. Is it Lululemon or Lululemon? Those types of companies are preparing for a sudden burst, a sudden increase in the number of customers that they will have available to them. Hallelujah! Praise the Lord! The trend is set to boost segments of the economy where single women historically spend more, including apparel and footwear, there we go, personal care, food away from home, and luxury and electric automobiles. I think that's the end of the article, right? So you can again, I'll add this link in the description, and you can read more about the article there. I condensed it down for the purpose of this video, but the title of the article is "The Rise of the SHEconomy." Ladies, corporations, banks, investors are preparing to cream you, are preparing to benefit off of the back of your misery. Misery, why? Because a woman is at her happiest when she is married and has children. And she's at her most miserable when she is earning, I believe it was the most miserable demographic of women are mid-40s women earning $100,000 a year and are single. Careers don't make you happy. Families do.
نار نار سنفجرها برصاصنا نمحوها لعب مهلا يا